Hello, ladies and gentlemen. In this lesson, we'll be adding and subtracting negative and positive numbers. Now, we have some rules that we follow when we're adding negative and positive numbers, as well as subtracting negative and positive numbers. Now, this is what we'll do in this lesson. We'll focus on adding negative and positive numbers. Where there is subtraction, we'll bring it to addition and follow the rule for addition. So let's look at that. Now, whenever we're adding negative and positive numbers, if the signs are the same, we simply add and keep the sign. So let's look at the first one. The first one here is 3 added to 5. So we're adding positive 3 to positive 5. The signs are the same, so we add them and keep the positive sign. Of course, because the 8 comes right after the equal sign, we do not need to put the positive. It's implied. Next one, number 2. We're adding, indicated by this plus operation, we're adding negative 8 to negative 4. The two numbers we're adding have the same sign in negative. And so therefore, we'll add 4 to 8, get 12, and keep the sign of both, which is negative. Signs are the same that we're adding, so we add the numbers to keep the sign. Here, we're adding negative 10 to negative 7. What do you think the answer will be? That is correct. If you said negative 17, you are correct. Why is that correct? Because we should add the 10 to 7, get 17, and keep the sign. Why do we do that? Because we're adding two numbers with the same sign. Here, number 4, you try this one. What should the answer be? Negative 3 added to negative 2. What should the answer be? That's correct if you said negative 5. Why negative 5? Because we're adding two numbers in negative 3 and negative 2. They both have negative signs, so we add 3 to 2, get 5, and keep the sign. Now let's look at adding two numbers with different signs. And of course, the rule for that will be different. So the signs are different for the numbers that we're adding. So what do we do? What do we do? Let's focus on the one up here. All right, we'll come to this later. So we're adding two numbers indicated by the plus sign, but they have opposite signs or different signs. We have positive 4 added to negative 5. And the rule is that we subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. Bigger number in terms of when the signs are ignored. So let's look at positive 4 and negative 5. We're adding them. Let's ignore the signs. Right? Let's ignore the signs. Which is bigger? The 5. Okay, good. Let's look at negative 6 and positive 7. When we ignore the signs, which one is bigger? 7. All right, so that's the idea there. But let's go back to the first one. We're adding positive 4 to negative 5. Because they have different signs, we want to subtract. So we're going to ignore the signs, of course. Take 4 from 5, we'll get 1. And if we ignore the signs, as we said before, which one will be bigger? The 5. 5 is bigger than 4. So we're going to keep the sign of that. And so it's negative 1. Again, 4 added to negative 5. So we have to subtract and get 1. Which signs do we keep? The sign of the 5. 5 is bigger than 4, of course, when we ignore the signs, but we will take the negative for that 5. Naturally, 4, positive 4, is really bigger than negative 5. But when we ignore the signs, we're looking at two positive numbers. And since we're saying 5 is bigger in its positive state, when we look at the sign it actually has originally, that's the one we'll keep, the negative. Okay. Let's look at negative 6 and positive 7 that we're adding. Opposite signs again, so we have to subtract, so we'll get 1. Ignoring the signs and look at both numbers as positive. Which one is bigger? The 7. So that will keep the sign for that one. So our answer will be a positive 1. We'll keep the sign of the 7, not of the 6. In other words, another way to look at it is this. Which one of these two numbers, go back to number 1, which one do we have more of? Do we have more positives or more negatives? We have more negatives than we do positives. So our answer should be negative. In this case, number 2, we have more positives than we do negative. So our answer should be positive. Now we're adding two numbers here, number 3, again with opposite signs. The 5 is positive. So when it's positive, we don't need to put the sign before it, especially when it starts off the expression, as in positive 5 plus negative 3. And since they're opposite, we want to subtract. And so that will give us a 2. Now, which sign do we keep? Well, we'll look at the two numbers that we're adding. Which one do we have more of? Do we have more positives or do we have more negatives when we compare them? Well, we have more positives than the amount of negatives. And so our answer will be a positive 2. In other words, as I said, if you ignore the signs, which number is bigger? 5. And so we'll keep the sign of that. Let's go down to the next rule. Rule when we are subtracting. Now we're told to change subtraction to addition. Change subtraction to what? Addition. And then do what? Change the sign of the number that we are subtracting. In other words, we add the opposite. So let's see what we're saying there. So in this one, everybody knows that 10 minus 5 is simply 5. Who doesn't know that? However, we want to look at it in a way that will help us with the rest. So that's why we're using what we know already. So we're going to change this. We're going to change this this subtraction here. Right? We're going to change this subtraction to what? As it says, change subtraction to addition. So we're going to change that subtraction to addition here. And what do we do next? We change the sign. Change sign of what? The number that we're subtracting. So what number is this? What number are we subtracting? We're subtracting a positive 5 from a positive 10. So that's why we get positive 5. But the idea here is what? We have a 5 and we want to do what? Change its sign to a negative 5. So we're adding, we're adding a positive number to a negative number. So remember that rule? What's the rule? When we're adding two numbers and they have different signs, we subtract. Ignoring the signs, we subtract. So 5 from 10 gives us 5. And we ask ourselves this question: which number of these two, 10 or negative 5, we have more of in terms of positive or negative? We have more positive, so our answer will be positive. So 10 minus 5 is 5 indeed, but we can definitely see it from a different perspective. Subtracting 5 is the same as adding the opposite of 5, which is adding negative 5. Okay, let's look at the other one here. We put back the 10. All right, so the expression is 10 minus negative 5. Remember, we're saying we add the opposite. So we're going to change this subtraction to what? Addition. And then we're going to change the sign of the number that we are subtracting originally. So we're going to change this negative 5 from a negative 5 to what? A positive 5. And so we're saying what? 10 plus 5. And of course that is 15. And it makes sense, because if 10 minus 5 is 5, then 10 minus negative 5, as in over here, should give us an increase rather than a decrease. Okay, let's look at the next one. Negative 8 minus 8. Again, remember, when we are subtracting, what do we do? When we are subtracting, what do we do? Change subtraction to addition. So what are we subtracting? From negative 8, we are subtracting 8. So what we're going to do is to write the first number as in negative 8. This subtraction, we're going to change it to what? We're going to change it to addition. Right? We're going to change it to addition. And what are we adding? Well, what are we subtracting originally? Let's go back and see what we are subtracting here. Let's go back to the original expression. So we are subtracting 8. So we're subtracting what? 8. And if we're subtracting 8, we're saying we're subtracting positive 8. But we don't need to put a positive, right? So the idea is we're going to change the subtraction to what? To addition. And the opposite of positive 8 is what? Negative 8. Again, we add. the opposite. So we're going to change the subtraction to addition, and we add the opposite. What's the opposite of positive 8? All right, negative 8. So negative 8 plus negative 8. Now when we're adding, what's the rule? Yes, that's correct. We add the numbers and keep the sign. When we're adding two numbers with the same sign, we add and keep the sign. So if you have all of these, then that's great.